Greetings, students. I'm Dr. Sadri, your instructor for this course. Again, in terms of, responding to the request of the students from a variety of courses, I am here to introduce one of my other publications. This particular publication was done with a graduate student who was actually my teaching assistant, so I wanted to make sure that he gets the credit. It's true that a lot of my colleagues, we do a lot of work ourselves, but I think we couldn't really do everything we can without the assistance of some of our teaching assistant, research assistant, etc. And this particular graduate student, at that time he was a PhD student, this was a few years ago. His name was David Driosolo, wonderful student from Italy. And then what we did was, because we were working on a course about the Middle East politics, we noticed that really there is no one book that is good and then kind of with minimum amount of bias, because most of the books in the Middle East, unfortunately, they're either pro one point of view and against another one, or pro one country and against another one. Or so I was just thinking that this is not a way to teach a course about Middle East politics, which is such a hot topic. Is that right? I'm independent. I don't have any agenda, but I wanted to make sure that my student, instead of being brainwashed to love someone or hate someone or this and that, just to be exposed to the ideas, just to be informed. That's all I wanted. And then to be mindful. And then hopefully when they identify the problems, they can come up with their own solution. And I'm hoping that many of their solution is going to be better than the solution coming up from my generation. So in that regard, we put together this course package for the politics of the Middle East class. And then, so David and I, we went over these things so many times, you can't imagine, all right. So what we did was we divided it into sections. We started by, for example, an introduction section, which basically look at the big picture, both from domestic perspective and historical aspect to what even foreign policy part. Then we talked about the whole notion of looking at states, beliefs, and ideologies. Is that right? In that regard, for example, we brought topics such as the late Professor Ali Mazroui's work about Islamic and then Western values, kind of comparing and contrasting them. The whole ideas of the clash of Islamic, models, by Professor Nui. And then we got into one of the most significant topics about the area, which, as you know, is oil. Everybody thinks about the Middle East. The first thing they come to their mind is oil. Okay, we talked about oil and oil politics, talking about the role of OPEC, then going and talking about political reform, which is a more of a domestic issue. In that regard, again, we borrowed ideas from, different scholars who have opposing views, and I never shied away when students, they say, oh, Dr. Sadi, there are readings over there, they're opposing one another. Yes, that was done. That was not accidental. That was done on purpose, because I wanted you to be exposed to different point of view, okay? I don't want you to just love something or hate something. I want you to be exposed. Then we talked about Islam and the Middle East and how it has impacted in terms of both domestic and foreign policy. Then we focused on the region. As you can see, it's a very, very significant region. Is that right? Political map, physical or topographical map. So in terms of regionalism, in terms of security, in terms of foreign policy. Then we got into some of the major conflict. Well, the two major conflict, one of it is called the Arab-Israeli conflict. Is that right? And then I went over there to explain that is it really all Arabs and all Israel? Because really the Arab-Israeli conflict can be defined in two different levels. One is a state-to-state conflict, which is state of Israel, which is for what? Neighboring, Arab states. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and what? Lebanon. Well, if you think about that, I know people are usually very, very pessimistic about the Middle East and peace in the Middle East, but think about it. In 2025, as of now, there's a major peace treaty between Israel and Egypt that has lasted for decades right now, okay? And that's the biggest, one of the biggest border they have. The other big border that they have is with Jordan. That also has a peace treaty, okay? So 2 out of 4, they have peace treaty. Now, by spring 2025, Syria is also not any threat to Israel anymore. Why? Because the Assad regime left, okay? And then the groups which are over there, yes, they're fundamentalists, Sunni Muslim, etc., etc. They have some of their own challenges, but really they haven't really challenged Israel. Okay, but, and then by that regime not being under the influence of Iran, Iran has a hard time sending what supplies to Hezbollah, which is what its proxy in Lebanon. And Lebanon, of course, doesn't. So Syria and Lebanon, they do not have a agreement with Israel. But as you can see, the situation is not as bad as usually people think. The other dimension of the so-called Arab-Israeli conflict is the conflict between State of Israel and the non-state actor, which is called, it's divided to two parts. Is that right? One is the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and then the other one has been controlled by what? Hamas, that came to power. Is that right? And of course, Hamas did in October, 2023, that horrible invasion of, Israel, and then of course the Israelis, they entered Gaza, and that conflict as of September, as of spring, as of spring of 2025 has not, in April 2025 is not resolved yet. We are hoping that it's resolved because we have people, innocent people on both sides getting killed. Of course, some more in one place as opposed to the other. But in war, to be very honest with you, there is really no winner. Okay, if you think about it that way. So that's one conflict. The other conflict has been what we call the Persian Gulf conflict. Traditionally, there was a rivalry between Iran and Iraq. And then, when Iraq basically got defeated after what, the Kuwait, crisis or something, there has been a rivalry between what, sometimes between Iraq and Kuwait, which, as you know, end up with what, the Gulf War, liberating Kuwait. And then later on, when there was a notion that maybe Iraq has, weapons of mass destruction and everything else, the second war in, 2023, in terms of the Iraq war, completely got rid of Saddam's regime. And now it's replaced with a regime that is very much influenced by the Iranians, okay? Then another rivalry that I want you to consider is the rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia, okay? Two very powerful states for different ways. Their power comes from different sources. Of course, they're both oil-producing countries, but they also do other things with different their own allies. So having said that one, the security can be sometimes very complex. Then beyond that one, we have also in this package, we talked about Arab Spring. You can't talk about the Middle East without talking about Arab Spring, the ideas that, what are the causes of it, what has been the result of it, and last but certainly not least, we talked about the impact of the regional powers and global powers like the U.S., Russia, and others in this area, because these countries, they are not completely isolated from the rest of the world. Is that right? So if you're interested, this package has been available through Cognella, publishing house. And then again, UCF Library has these copies, and you're more than welcome to ask your local library to order it. So please don't buy books, okay? I think you should really use the library more often, and some of these materials are already available free of charge anyway, okay? So if you have any question, feel free to contact me. Thank you.